Welcome to the top M&A entrepreneurs. Today, my guest is Jon Lowrance from Tennessee, who has acquired 5 companies, and he's going to tell us a story. But before we do that, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you like this content. All right, let's get on the show. Jon Lowrance, first thing, you spell your name correctly, because that's how I spell my name. Haven't met too many of those people on the planet. Yeah,
you know the struggle.
Yeah, yeah. Where's the H? Where's the H? Not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, I blame my dad. He's got the same name that I do.
Yeah.
So
my mom never had an answer for that. Never. All right. So Jon Lowrance acquired. So let's talk about where you started from. What were you doing before you started acquiring these companies? Which is what, in the last couple of years?
Yeah. I've started my acquisition gig, I guess, probably about 2 years ago, and it was basically earmarked by the day that I decided that I was going to sell my current business. So I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and when I was about, I guess at this point I would have been 42 years old, not really ready to retire and didn't really have the energy for a startup, and was trying to figure out what the next version of my life looked like. And that's when I got introduced this whole concept about acquiring businesses.
Yeah. So what was this business that you wanted to sell?
Yeah. So I had a grading and excavating business here in Middle Tennessee, and we were doing right around 15 million in revenue. And I was a part owner in that company. And we kind of had a little bit of a breakup. And so he continued on with his ownership and bought out my portion.
It wasn't amicable. It was something other than.
Oh no, yeah, it was a little messy. It was a little disagreements. You know, that's kind of par for the course sometimes. I mean, if you've been in business long enough, you've had some sort of disagreement, or something that basically causes a relationship to end.
Yeah, if you haven't, you're not in the real world.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure even Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger had disagreements. In fact, Warren Buffett was a Democrat liberal. Charlie Munger was a Republican conservative. So,
oh yeah.
Do you think they had any disagreements? Yes.
Oh, for sure. They did. I mean, are they human?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me talk to you about this little grading excavating business. Did you guys start this yourself, and what was your role?
Yeah, so it was kind of it wasn't a startup in the fact that he had already started the company himself. And I think at that point in time, he was doing somewhere around 600,000 or 700,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
And I think he was kind of a field person, and we pretty much kind of joined for. I think he realized that if he was going to scale the business, he needed to bring somebody on that had some of the knowledge on the back office, the back end, not necessarily the field. And so we kind of joined up, and I was a 30% owner at that point. And
did he give you that 30%, or did you buy in?
I bought in, yes.
Yeah. At the valuation of a $600,000 excavating business.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So that was
that over time, or you just had to give him cash?
That was over time, and of course, needless to say, I way overpaid for what I didn't know how to evaluate a business at that point in time in my life. He kind of had to value what he thought it was worth. I had a value of what I thought it was worth. None of it backed up by any academic equations.
So what do you think 600, what you know now, what you thought then, like $600,000 excavating business is a service-based business. What was that throwing off in cash like back then? Just say, give me.
Oh gosh, I think I bought in 30% of the business somewhere, and I think that 30% cost me about $250,000, which I paid over time.
Yeah, sounds like it was you overpaid.
Oh yeah. That might have been.
Like, wait a minute. What is the excavating? Even if it was doing 50%, let's say it's all service. I'm not sure it was, because you got a lot of heavy equipment moving stuff around.
Yeah.
Even if it was throwing off $300,000 and you bought 30% for $250.
Yeah.
Yeah, think somebody overpaid.
I don't think I'm really building credibility here with your audience, John.
Well, we all start from somewhere. I can tell you, we're all making mistakes.
I paid for my education on that one. So
you pay. Is it better than going to an Ivy League school right now?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. It was really kind of my entrance into really scaling a business. And I think going through that, knowing that I overpaid, and I think even on the back end when I sold it, it was, we didn't really get counsel on this. And I really didn't do a whole lot of education and due diligence. And had I probably would have not done the deal. But if I hadn't done the deal, I don't know where I'd be right now.
Yeah. What's your philosophy on that now? Because it sounds like you're saying, get the deal done. You may overpay, but get the deal done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know that's, and of course, correct me, I'm not saying be reckless and make horrible decisions, but, obviously the mergers and acquisition space has got a lot of interest right now. I know that you know that. It's people are talking about it more than they ever have. A lot of people are aware that that's an option for them, and there's lots of content out there that talks about it. And in a lot of ways, I believe that the academic world, the educational system that we grew up, is in direct conflict with what it takes to acquire a business or be an entrepreneur. And I think what I mean by that is, in our school system, the way we were raised, it was like, how do you succeed in school? You study, and you give the right answers.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that give the most right answers are the most successful in school. And in this
that you would place your bets on that it would succeed.
Yeah. Just
based
saying
upon that standard.
You were rewarded for having the right answers. You weren't rewarded for having the wrong answers.
Yeah.
There was no reward for that. You were graded and tested. Right answers give you the success, to say, hey, I was a successful student. Now, in the entrepreneurial world, it's right or wrong answers are the right answers. And that you are rewarded even in mistakes.
Yeah, that's true. Like I think you're talking about somebody who wrote Rudyard Kipling. The imposter and the success and failure are imposters. It's just all part of life's experiences where you learn.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I've made a ton of mistakes, and every single one of those have been great teachers for me.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of ways, I tell people all the time, the number one thing that is probably the most important if you're going to be in this is action.
Yeah.
Is taking action and not sitting on the sidelines, not spending so much time just thinking and studying and preparing. I mean, you can make a career of, learning this material. You can learn everything there is about evaluating a business, doing due diligence, how to organize it and how to structure it, and contracts and LOIs and NDAs and all this stuff, and be great at it. But the one that's going to actually make money is the one that actually bought a business. And that means chances are, I haven't had a business yet that I didn't look, hindsight, say, oh, I wasn't aware this existed. I wasn't aware, maybe I paid a little bit too much. Maybe it looked a little better on paper than in reality. I mean, I think without exception, every single one of those is going to occur.
Yeah. I just saw a post on a guy from Twitter that said, oh my God, just bought a business. 6 months later, everything is different than when I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a contract fell out. Employees did this. Everything kind of was different from what it looked like.
Yeah.
Than when I bought it, and what my point of view look like. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the point is that I'm sure he's probably glad that he has it, even though it's different. It's the start of something to where he's kind of shortcutted in front of the line here, bought something that hopefully cash flows enough that it's able to take care of whether it's owner financed or whatever debt payments he has.
Yeah.
And he has something he can improve upon, and that business had been in business for 10 years, he got a 10-year head start.
Yeah.
And you can make things better, and things aren't permanent, but things are usually never as good as you think they are, and they're also never as bad as you think they are.
That's true. I love that statement. When you sold to this guy, 30% fair market value, did you get a good price now? You're smarter?
I probably got a little, I sold it and it was a little complicated. One thing I learned in about this was we had a buy sell agreement, but in that buy sell agreement, we didn't really have any language that said how we were going to go about evaluating what it was worth. Now, every company that I have that I'm in partners with, I've learned from, and not only do we have a buy sell language, but we also say we're going to evaluate it under this metrics, and be very specific whether we're doing a trailing 12-month, EBITDA that's
Mm-hmm.
being, approved by a third party accountant, and here's the multiplier that it's at today. And we can always, as the company grows, we'll always mark it up. As
Yeah.
we can always change the language and do an amendment to that once a year or once every 2 years or as often as needed.
So he bought the 30% back from you?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel comfortable about that exit?
Oh, I
Or do
mean,
you
it's
regret, is it just like, let me just put context about it. It's
yeah,
like, we all go like, oh, I wish I could have got better, but you got to move on.
yeah.
Yeah.
I am extremely. I think it was it was a hurtful thing for me, and I think that I still got, probably, if I'm being honest, some pain from that experience.
Let's
But if I
talk about that, Jon.
it's going
What's
to turn it,
painful? What's painful about it?
but yeah, I mean, I gosh, whew, I wasn't prepared for that. It was one of these things where I think that I had really worked pretty hard in the business on the back end, and I think at the time he was the field guy, I was kind of the back office person. And as time moved on, um, I had basically hired, trained, built the processes, built the entire back office, and I think it got to the point to where, um, we got crowded at the top,
Yeah.
and I think ultimately the day happened when, I guess he kind of demoted me, to head of estimating, and made himself the CEO. And that's not really what I had been spending so much of my time for. And so I
Yeah.
said, I'm out.
Yeah. And there
And
was really nothing in your language that you could have done. I mean, in the constitution of
yeah, I mean, there'd probably been a fire burning, under, a lot of tension that had slowly been building up. And I think you had the right accelerant at the right time. And I think that was just the dissolving of the relationship. And, it was 70% him, 30% me. I probably felt like I was doing quite a bit of, I
Do you
wanted to
feel
be,
that was true? I mean, it's hard. It's like as
yeah,
humans, we always think we're doing more
yeah,
than we're viewed by others.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think if you asked him, if you had him on this podcast, he'd have a completely different opinion about how the whole thing went down. I
Yeah.
think ultimately I was wanting to be a 50-50 partnership, and there was no way for me to get the other 20%. And it just created some tension, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, ask a witness at a crime scene. They're both going to tell two different stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, but also, in that moment, I had a very limited mindset, and every percentage of equity mattered because that's all that was ever going to be available to me.
Yeah.
And so I
But
wasn't
you were
living.
throwing off 15 million. I mean, you were doing
Yeah,
$15 million.
but I didn't come from a place of abundance. I think I was
Yeah.
probably still in a place of scarcity. Now I'll take 10% of a company. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because there's so many companies out there. My plan is to have in our holding company, at least 30 companies, over the next 5 to 6 years. And I'm not going to have 100% of equity in any of those. And so it's just going to be small bits and pieces. And that was
Was it a desire for wanting more action in the company, like more control to make decisions? Because you're not going to be, I mean, with your holding company now and owning minority shares, you don't have a lot of power to make decisions.
It's true. I mean, most of as soon as I got out and was trying, I probably spent about 4 or 5 months trying to figure out what my next step was. And I call that my wandering in Egypt phase of life.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a lot of reflection, and I got right back into a partnership with somebody else, and we're 50-50 partners. And so most of our deals that we have, we own 100% of the company. He's 50 and I'm 50. And I feel like we really spent a lot of time making sure that we wanted the same thing. We come from the same value system. We have the same goals. We're very aligned, and we're very different in
How did you do
personality.
that? What kind of test? I always call it the buds class, the SEAL buds class, because the way
Mhm.
they pick people,
Mhm.
it's like through fire.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I for me, it was a faith based decision. Um, I'm a Christian, and so I pretty much am under the authority of God, and I felt like I needed to find somebody that had very similar values, had incredible strengths to bring to it, different strengths. And so I was looking for a very specific set of talents. And this person was extremely talented in accounting and bookkeeping. They basically were a real estate investor that also had a side job working for PwC in turnaround restructuring. So really, really big on the corporate world, has a incredible pedigree, very calm, not excitable, you know, patient, has the same values, family person. I mean, before we even did our first deal, I mean, I had invited him and his wife and kids over to my house to eat, and I wanted to see what his wife was like. I wanted to see how the interaction was. I wanted to see what my wife thought about him. And, so we had lots of
What did your wife say
conversations.
about him?
Say what?
What did your wife say about him?
Oh, she loved him. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like he's just he's a great person. And so um, there's for sure an opportunity for him to hurt me and betray me, and I could be having a conversation 10 years from now about how that relationship eroded too. But sometimes you got to take the risk, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got to extend trust, because the alternative of me being cynical and never trusting anybody, I don't want to know that Jon Lowrance. I want to know the guy that is trusting and trusted.
Yeah, you'll never take risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you agree to this. Did you guys have an alignment as far as types of businesses you want to do and what
Hmm.
that looked like?
Yeah.
What
And
was that thesis? What did that thesis look like?
well, I mean, he came from the turnaround structure. So, I mean, he was a lot of times dealing with distressed businesses. And then
Right.
we basically agreed that we wanted to buy profitable companies, not distressed companies. Now, I
Right.
think there's some benefits to that. He's obviously well qualified. Um, and we pretty much knew what we were going to, we pretty much were looking for about a 500,000 to 700,000 EBITDA company. And we wanted it to be local in our backyard. And we were going to do one company together. And um,
50-50.
50-50. Well, what's odd about that is I actually had found the first deal, and I had found it before I decided to go into partners with him. And so I had this whole thing, and I feel like I was equipped to run 100% of the company. And I was trying to figure. I had the deal, and I basically approached him and I said, "Hey, what do you think about doing this with me?" And he just got so excited and was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Why don't you think about what you want, and then come back?" And so he came back, I think, the next day, and was like, "I want 30%." And I was like, "Oh." Because the 70-30 split was the same split that we that
He's
I,
like, all right, let me write out a script for you because
yeah.
it's already been written. Yeah,
Hmm.
that
And so
story's already been told and it doesn't turn out. So
in that
yeah,
moment, I was just like, I felt like I knew exactly in that moment, like, no, it's going to be 50-50. I'm going to give you 50, And so I found the deal. I provided the down payment for him. He kind of got in for no money out of pocket, and, it's gifted. And so I extended him quite a bit of trust. But, you know, I think he's so thankful and gracious. And since then, I think of the 5 deals that we've got, he's brought in 2 of the 5.
yeah. So what was this first deal? What kind of business was it?
It was a retaining wall company here in Nashville.
Retaining wall.
Yes.
So tell me what that is in Nashville. Why do I need retaining walls?
Well, first off, I didn't go out looking for a retaining wall company. I was looking for companies that I could buy. And I happened to find out that company, the owner was interested in it. Well, what's weird is actually the retaining wall company was the first company I bought, but the first company that I actually had under contract under LOI became my second company that I bought, because first they said no to me, and that was a roofing company. They said no, and then that deal fell apart. But in the meantime, I'd already bought my first company, and then it shows back up. I find out when the deal fell apart, I reached back out to the owner and said, "You still want to entertain taking an offer from me again?" And so the first deal that I had that fell apart, that was the reason why me and James partnered up. That fell apart.
So this was the next one just fell in your
Yeah.
lap, which is a train tool. Well, how big was that? What did that look like in revenue?
Which one? The retaining wall?
The retaining wall. The first one you closed, yeah.
Yeah, the first one was somewhere around 3.5 to 4 million in revenue.
Yeah. And it was profitable on market, profitable or off market?
Yeah, it was profitable. It was off market because I was, strangely enough, I was sitting in a office of somebody where I was doing a little bit of consulting work. I was still looking for a business to buy. I was in a landscaper's office helping, doing some consulting work because their CFO had passed away, and so I kind of came in as an interim CFO for a month or two just to help get things until he found a replacement. And the owner of that landscaping company gets a phone call from I guess a supplier saying, "Hey, would you be interested in buying a retaining wall company?" And he's like, "Not really, but I'm sitting here right now talking to somebody that I know is looking for businesses." And so that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah. So this was when being in the right place at the right time, kind of lucky, but through grit, you're doing work for somebody. So
yeah. And so, one of the first things, I told I put it on my LinkedIn, I put it on Facebook, every conversation I was having, I had talked to most of my warm network, letting them know I was looking for businesses. So,
and he knew. He was like an apostle for you. He knew.
Yeah, but if I hadn't ever told him I was going to do it, he never would have thought of me when that conversation occurred.
Yeah.
So the first advice that when people a lot of times ask me, like, "Man, I want to get started. How do I get my first deal?" It's like, you got to let everybody know. Treat it like if you just became a real estate agent. You got to let
cards everywhere.
Let everybody know.
Yeah.
And so you got to do the same thing. From an investment side point, is that you've got to tell your whole warm wet network needs to know that you are actively inquiring for businesses. So when that happens, that conversation happens, great. And the other thing is a lot of times just asking people, "Hey, do you know any owners?" I mean, the first real deal I had, I called my accountant, the accountant that I had been working with in the construction business that I had just sold. He did books for tons of construction companies in my area here in town. And so I called him. I said, "Hey, do you have any clients that you're working with that are looking to retire and might be entertained at having a conversation with me about selling their business?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've got 3." And so that's kind of how that conversation, And so I had the same type of conversation with all the business to business professional services that I had used, whether it was an insurance agent, an accountant, any of our kind of
some people that have a big microphone are talking to a lot of people already.
Yeah. And specifically business owners.
Yeah.
Like if you owned a business and you were ready to retire, who are the people you're talking? You're talking to your lawyers, you're talking to your accountants, you're talking to your insurance guy. Maybe you're talking to realtors, thinking about selling your building. There's all sorts of conversations that would be happening. And so a lot of times I try to get in front of those people to figure out who the owners are.
Yeah. Well, so tell me about this process. Does he give the phone to you, or do you just get the information and call him back and you start the process?
I got the information. He said, "Yep." And so I got the information, and then I made a phone call. Like, I basically said, "All right." And I walked outside, immediately dialed. I didn't give it 2 minutes rest.
You're hot on the trail.
Well, yeah. Why wait?
And now, who was this calling? The owner died? Who was this calling?
The owner hadn't died. He was um, it was a supplier. So this retaining wall company bought a lot of blocks from this supplier, and
uh
this supplier obviously doesn't want his,
his great account, cash flowing account, to go away.
yeah.
So yeah,
So he's trying to find anybody that he knew in his network that might be interested in buying a retaining wall company.
yeah. And so what did they do? He put you in touch with this owner, and you guys
Yep. And then
get
we
together
had
face to face, or what?
Yep, we had lunch. We had I think we met for dinner.
And it's not a surprise to the owner that he's looking for a buyer, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I always try to get in front of the owner, and a lot of times I bring my wife with me.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah.
How does that? Is she a model, or is she just a good reader, or
No, it's just I'm a person just like you.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think in some ways, like I'm not private equity. I mean, I'm wearing a hoodie. It's hey, let's get together and have a conversation. You bring your wife, I'll bring mine, and let's just have dinner together. I think something magical happens when you break bread with somebody. It's not. It doesn't feel the stuffiness of sitting in a boardroom, with a bunch of lawyers talking back and forth and trying to be too buttoned up. I mean, real
Were
answers.
you starting this conversation? You exchange all the pleasantries, and then did you just jump into it? So you trying to sell your business, or are you trying to look for some connection? Hey, what school did you go to? Where do your kids go to school, et cetera?
It's all connection.
Yeah.
I want that. My only goal in that moment, and of course, these are off market property. The off market.
Yeah, these take a lot longer to cultivate.
Yes, and so
yeah.
And so it's not like there's no broker involved, there's no attorney involved. And so my only initiative in that first meeting is for them to walk away and like me.
Yeah. And you're not asking for NDA in place or financials or tax returns?
No. I mean, I know at that point, I know that the company, and, I can do it. There's enough information out there if you know where to go look to get an idea of how that company is a small company, big company, how many employees they have. And so for the most part, of course I wouldn't do that without, I had a conversation with the owner on the phone, right? So, let's just, I basically got the owner's information from that vendor, and then I'm making a phone call, and I made a phone call that day, and I introduced myself, and I probably had a 45-minute conversation with him over the phone where I'm just having a, are you interested in selling your business? And
let me make sure you're not chasing a bad deal. Did you find that it was, did he tell you it was doing $3.5 to $4.5 million and it's very profitable, or?
Yeah. And I didn't ask for, proof of any of this. It's just a conversation. How big is your business? How many employees do you have? Are you guys making good money? What do you love about it? What do you not like about it?
What did he say when he said, you guys making good money? He said, yes, of course. Right?
Yeah, of course, right. So at this point, it's not. It doesn't feel like a bad deal, and it is something that I'm interested in. So then you just take it to the next thing, which is like, hey, let's get together for dinner. Would you be open to that?
Did you take your partner? Did your partner come with you?
Mm-hmm. No. My wife.
Your wife, not your wife did, but not your other PwC partner.
No.
Right? Yeah.
And of course, he knows about it, but it's like a lot of times, like I don't want that meeting to feel too stuffy. Like, oh, I'm gonna bring my partner. You're gonna add, and I got a checklist here of 25 questions, and let's go ahead and give me your P&L statement for the last 3 years. And
just getting to know them if you have warm feelings toward each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you probe in any way to find something you didn't like, or like you would dismiss anyway? Like everybody's got their own personality.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't really find too much in there besides realizing, I realized, it was an owner operated business. So, in some ways I'd be buying a job, which I knew that, my plan wasn't to have a job. I think I worked there for about a month to help transition that out. But I knew that there was several things that I didn't like about it, but I also felt like those were opportunities. And so one thing that I've noticed is that I don't even call it due diligence anymore. I call it opportunity finding.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people will go through due diligence, they're looking for reasons to either lower the value of the business based on what they had on their LOI, or they're looking for things that scare them away. And so every negative thing that I can find is an opportunity to make it better than what it was.
Right. I would say that's true, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
However, there's some things you just can't change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
No, and I agree.
it's a red flag. Yeah.
And by the way, this is not a prescription of how to, every business I've bought has transpired different ways. None of them have been the same.
Yeah.
So there's been times where I haven't taken. I mean, I try to have dinner. That's what I would prefer. But I've also sat there and I've taken my business partner before. I've sat in a boardroom at a bank where it was an on-market property and the whole family's there and there's an attorney there and it felt very stuffy and we had a pitch deck in front of us.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've experienced a lot of different things. I have my preference of how I'd like it to go, but
it doesn't always go the same, right?
Everything's going to change, and change, breaks the brittle, and so I really need to be flexible and open-minded to different types of personalities, different ownership structures, and different ways of doing business, including the transaction of acquiring a company.
Yeah. So I am in agreement with that because you got to sell the seller. They got to, peers tell their peers. They got to like you to be able to want to take over the business. And obviously that was green light, check mark the box. How soon was it before you asked for the financial documents, report cards to examine? And,
yeah. I mean,
let me go back to something. You were doing interim CFO, so you definitely have some financial acumen with you, plus your PwC guy.
Yeah. And a lot of times I felt like I had a lot of financial acumen because it was necessary. And so in my company, I was the one that was the crunching the numbers, and I was hiring, people from a financial bookkeepers and accountants to help. And, I wanted accounting as a language of business. It's so important. And so I love it. And I spend a lot of time doing it, but I also realize, you can go a lot deeper than what I am in that realm. And so I wasn't I didn't want to be the expert in accounting in my partnership. I wanted
just
somebody
want to be able to tell the winners from the losers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I brought in somebody that's much more talented and gifted in that area than I am. I'm grateful for it.
And so when you asked for the financial report cards, what did you, when you looked at the business and the balance sheet, the income statements, what'd you think? It was like a good business. We need to put an LOI on it quick, or what?
The first one was, the first one was not, the books were not accurate. I mean, you could tell, like, we asked for,
they were not balanced.
Oh no. I mean, I knew that right off the bat. And so you almost had to throw it in the trash because it was worth nothing. And, I had to be very gentle about saying that because the wife was doing the bookkeeping. So,
yeah, it's an insult to go like, what are you doing? Do you know what balanced books are?
So I had to pretty much look at, so instead of looking at it from an accrual basis, I had to look at it from a cash basis and really base it on tax returns to sit there and say.
So they weren't doing accrual accounting.
Well, they were trying to.
They were trying to, but it was half and half, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just, it wasn't accurate enough that I could not justify it. So I really had to look at, the tax returns, proven tax receipts, I guess, rather, like, I know how much they paid in taxes.
Yeah.
And they obviously had an accountant at the end of the year sit there and say this. And so it's kind of money coming in, money coming out. So I had to I was going a little blind. It was not the ideal situation. I mean,
no, because it's really hard if you're doing cash accounting. You can't tell where your expenses meet your revenues, and you don't really know if it's profitable because you're paying bills. I mean, so I wouldn't
recommend that. I mean, I really wouldn't. But I had the same philosophy that I'm telling you. It's.
Well, I mean, you got to like you said, that could be opportunity, right?
Well, you got to get your first deal. You got to get your first company. And I wasn't about to let it go. And so
what did your PwC partner say when you said I got some messy books, but it looks like a good company?
Yeah, I mean, we went through it together. I mean, it was, I mean, there was a veil of obscurity there. And so in some ways we felt like we could, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be making a dumb decision. And we felt like there was tremendous amount of opportunity here and that we could grow the company, which we did. We grew the company, almost doubled it in the first year.
Really? So
Yeah.
let me go back to a point here. A lot of times in these small businesses, they're not doing accounting with cash and accrual and trying to hide things. It's just because they don't know, right?
Yes. Yeah. Nothing malicious,
Yeah.
and
Did
but
you see any malicious
mm-mm,
behavior in the funny
mm-mm,
ad backs, anything like that, moving
mm-mm,
expenses here or there, or just
no,
hiding expenses, something else?
just didn't know, and
Yeah.
so, but most of every company that we acquire, we acquire it with the hopes, and maybe this is a better way to say this, is that I got to believe that I could double that business in size within 3 years.
Yeah. So it
Because
was
at that point in time, if you can double a business in 2 or 3 years, it almost makes whatever you purchased it for irrelevant, as long as you weren't just,
yeah, no kidding. Right. Um, so when did you decide to make an offer and how did you value it?
we pretty much valued it on about a 3.5. I mean, it was pretty
Three and a half
quick
of what? SDE or
of
net
of,
or
of
EBITDA?
EBITDA.
Of
Yeah,
EBITDA. Okay.
adjusted EBITDA.
And did you say that the tax returns were EBITDA or the
I weighted it based on 3 years of tax returns.
okay.
So I basically, gave, obviously higher preference to the most recent year, and decreased down over the 3 years, and kind of got an adjusted weighted EBITDA. And then I also realized that I was not going to be taking a job, and so I also needed to replace his salary with somebody else's salary that was going to be operating the company.
Yeah. And you definitely found enough cash flow in there to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
All right. And then what did that offer process look like? When did you meet face to face to do an offer? Or you sent an email or what?
Yeah, we had several. I mean, it went back and forth, to be honest with you. I mean, it was probably the whole deal is I found out about this probably in April. I'm trying to remember in my head, but I want to say that somewhere around, February, March or April is when I knew that this company was available, and I had it purchased by mid-June.
Yeah, that's less than 90 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved
And
quick.
did they have legal representation? That's fast for any business. This
Yeah,
is
I know.
legal representation? No.
Mm-mm.
So how do you think he saw you? Like, here's an honest guy,
Mm-hmm.
Christian.
Yeah.
He's not going to try to screw me over. We're going to give the benefit of the doubt on.
Yeah.
He values my business.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not
Yeah.
trying to take advantage of me. Was there
Yeah.
a feeling that that he ever was like, it's worth more than 3.5?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say, every owner, it's their baby, right?
Every owner thinks his business is worth more. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had to negotiate back. I think that it ultimately was at a higher price than I wanted. But I was willing to concede that because I worked it into where it was 100% owner financed.
So let me ask you about that 100% owner seller finance.
Yeah.
It's an off-market deal. He's receptive to this because why? I thought he had health problems.
He did not have health problems. I think he was stressed, and he was ready to retire, and was probably overworked, and was just done.
Okay. So he was just, there's no more gas in the tank.
Right.
What benefits did you convey to him to say it's better to go this seller financing than for us to go out and get an SBA loan?
Yeah. And so he was ready to move quick. He wanted it to happen quick. He was stressed to the max. And so I basically said, hey, he wanted it to happen very fast. I was like, this is going to take a while because we're going to get a loan on this. And
Oh, so you presented that to him and said, we're going to
and
go
then I said, well, here's the deal: we can close fast, we can do 100% owner financing, and in fact, here's what you're going to get per month. And so I really framed it because sometimes people aren't open to owner financing, but when you give them a decent interest rate on it,
what was it? What's a decent interest rate?
I mean, at the time it was, 6, I think it was 5 or 6%.
Yeah. You're 3 years ago. So that was fine. Right.
Yeah.
Is it variable interest rate or is it? No. Okay.
No, but I basically put together an amortization schedule, and sometimes I do a balloon payment, sometimes I don't, and I try to pay it off aggressively to where they're at least getting. I mean, I want them to see a monthly check that is actually appealing to them.
Yeah,
and that makes seller financing much easier to pitch. And so I think the difference on this was that we can go slower, and you can get this, at the closing table. You're probably going to have a higher tax implication because you're getting it all at once. But the bank's going to do some underwriting, and they're going to make sure that I'm not paying too much for this.
That's right. There's guardrails on that.
There's guardrails on
SBA loan.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was really, because what's the return on investment for me if I didn't have to put anything down?
Kind of unlimited, right?
It's infinite.
Yeah.
So in some ways, like the company's cash flowing, and
what was the terms on that? How many years did you give him, or did he want with seller financing?
It was basically a 5-year.
5-year. Okay.
Yeah.
What's his involvement anymore? Was he involved at all, or just he
was involved for about 3 months.
Yeah.
And then he was gone.
And does he talk to you anything like, hey, this is the greatest thing in the planet, or what?
Yeah, I think he's happy. I mean, after he sold the business, he did have a health issue.
Yeah.
And so I think he's very grateful that he sold it at the time, because if he had that health issue, while he still owned the business, I think he would have had no option but to shut it down.
Yeah. So what did you guys do? The first thing you do when you took over the business? I mean, clean up the books.
Yeah. We basically, at this point we started over. It was too much to all the historical. We had to keep the balance sheet right, but we basically started back, over, and said, you know what, we're not really going to have any benefit, or there's too many distortions here to look at it from a historical thing. So we obviously.
At some point, you just got to go, okay, we're going to write that part off, and then we were starting all new with a whole new system. So some stuff we have to write off.
Yeah, and because of that, we had to get better clarity on what our costs were, because obviously it's in the construction base. So cost accounting is a big deal.
Well, it's to understanding unit level economics. So, was there any surprises in there? It cost more to do the business than you thought, or cost less? Or great? Yeah. Okay, cost. No surprises. It costs more.
Yeah. And so we obviously had to raise our prices. I mean, that was, it cost more.
Like how much?
I mean, it was probably a 10% gap. So we raised prices, within the first 2 months.
And
about 10%.
Those prices were to make but you were profitable. You just wanted more profit, or did you were unprofitable?
It wasn't as profitable. It wasn't as profitable. The cost to our margin wasn't high enough.
Yeah.
And so, in order to fix that problem, you can either increase volume, reduce cost, or increase prices.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of done a combination of all three.
Yeah. And who's driving it? Is that you or your PwC partner guy?
But it's a team effort. It's a team effort, and we have discussions. How are we gonna get this accomplished? So I mean, a lot of it is just you've got to have good clean accounting, and then you're able to look at the numbers and saying, hey, what is our gross profit? We're looking at our revenue or cost of goods, looking at our income, and then obviously we got to factor in our debt-free cash flow. It's
Yeah, it's
because we're
completely different now that you have a debt payment
yeah.
for the business. Yeah.
So we've obviously got to make enough money every month to pay the salaries of the people that are running the business. Pay all of our bills plus pay the debt payment and principal. Principal and interest, and then hopefully have something left over.
Yeah, I gotta, this is kind of a conversation side note, but these guys that take out the SBA loan on a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio don't realize that most of their cash flow is going to go right to paying off the debt of the loan for 10 years.
Yep.
And like that changes your complete look of your business on how you feel, like how much cash do I have in this business to spend on
Yeah.
expansion? Well,
Yeah.
not much.
Yeah. And so, obviously we are probably, we're not trying to buy for value as much as we are trying to buy for growth.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are probably two separate types of buy boxes. Some people are really trying to get a good price and a good stable value and thinking that it's just going to continue on that trajectory. I'm more focused on buying something and being able, it's got to be scalable, like, immediately.
Well,
And so
how scalable did you think this business was? I mean, eh, I don't know what town. What town are you in?
in Nashville.
Nashville. Well, it's a
Yeah.
pretty big town, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it's, we've got the topography that, all the good real estate's gone. All the flat real estate's gone. It's all what's left is things are getting tighter. And of course we have a topography that changes quite a bit. We're not a flat city, and we're not on a mountain either, but it was just, we got hills all over the place.
Yeah.
And so retaining walls are pretty much showing up on most any property of any substantial size.
Yeah.
Is going to have some level of retaining walls going into it. And there's really not a whole lot of competition. So the competition was low. I was looking at that, like, hey, what's the competitive environment look like? What is the projections in growth? Is this a service that's going to be necessary?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's unique to Tennessee. If you go to New Orleans, you'll see some houses there that
you're
are
in the Delta.
like sunken down. And to build a new house in New Orleans, you have to dig down before you hit the water, and then put massive telephone poles down there.
Yeah.
Before you put, sediment and then concrete. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, having being in that business in New Orleans would be great.
Yeah.
Not retaining wall, but obviously if you're driving pile driving and piers and doing that type of aggregate footings.
Yeah. So how did you guys grow this business? How much did you grow in the last 2 years?
Yeah, so we went from 3.5 to we're right around 5.5 to 6.
5.5 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty great. What did you guys do to grow it?
Hired
you cleaned your books. You understand your level economics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then what?
Added another crew.
One more crew. As soon as you understood what it took to do 3 million, you added the whole crew, or just kind of have to.
It was a one crew company.
Yeah.
They had one crew that was operating, so now we have 2 crews.
Okay.
I mean, there was a little bit of, I think, capital investment. I had to buy another machine. Had to buy another truck or 2.
Yeah. Once you understand what the expenses required to generate $1 million or $2 million, whatever revenue it was, he goes like, that's all we have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we improved our marketing. At the time there was no website. There was no real digital presence, So I mean, it was lots of opportunities there, and so we pretty much are doing that, prescription as far as most of these companies that we're purchasing. We're really looking to say, man, while we're looking at and entertaining the thought of buying it, we've got to believe that it can grow.
Yeah, you have to. This is, how did you decide there was a lot of demand for it? Did he have a process in place for, creating marketing to create demand, or was there just people just calling him automatically? Hey, I understand you're the do retaining walls. What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how he was getting. He was known as the guy that installed retaining walls, and he might have been one of 4 or 5 that were known in this area.
Yeah. And demand was So I'm kind of getting a read on the guy that was like he grabbed onto a bull and
Mhm.
it was going a little bit more than he wanted to, and it kicked him off after
Yeah.
8 seconds. Yeah.
And I don't think that, that a lot of times owners, they suffer from a similar affliction that they can't hand off some of the responsibilities that they do, either because A, they don't think anybody can do it, or B, they don't want to trust somebody with that much responsibility.
Yeah.
And so you end up that the company is going to grow to, they're the lid on their company because they can't get out of the way to create systems and processes that don't involve them.
Yeah. That's why 93% of business never go over $1 million.
So I mean, I think he was exhausted. I mean, he was the crew leader. He was a sales guy. He'd work all day, come home, have him and his wife might do some accounting, and he'd do some estimates and bids and send some stuff out, and then he'd go get up in the morning and go look at a job before the sunrise came up, and then so he was hard working and just burn out.
Yeah. Let me ask you a technical deal. Did that require a contractor's license in Tennessee, and how did I'm sure it did, and how did you solve that?
Yeah, I got a contractor's license.
You got the contractor's license. Don't you have to go? You go through a test. Don't you have to do a apprentice stage?
Not in Tennessee.
Not in Tennessee. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
his contractor's license left with him. It didn't stay with the company.
he didn't have a contractor's license.
What was that?
He said he didn't have a contractor's license
To build retaining walls in Tennessee. You know
Yeah.
how much trouble that would happen in San Francisco if you built a
Well,
anything.
this is the free world out here in Nashville, Tennessee, buddy. Tennessee's not like California.
Oh my God! You have to get a Juris Doctorate to get a contractor's license in California. Yeah. So this is a nice template. You guys happy with the way it's going? And yeah.
I mean,
Let me ask you: you're talking about growth? Growth is different than throwing out value. Did you guys split the free cash flow? One goes into one bank account, or are you taking a salary? And what is that? How did that work out?
So we're pretty much planning on being. We haven't really taken. We haven't really taken much money out of that business right now.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's helped funding the growth, and then we're aggressively paying down. And so our hope is that here within 6 months we'll be free and clear. That's our hope.
Lot more cash flow after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had, and we also didn't need to take money from it because we had. Once you start getting other entities involved, it takes the pressure off. If one entity has to see if you were to buy one company, and you're not taking a job in the company, that company's got to have enough cash flow to not only take care of its company obligations, but pay down the debt and also feed your entire family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of pressure for one company.
Yeah, it is.
So that's why we've kind of got the idea that it's like, man, let's take the pressure off. Let's get another one. So we've got 5 companies. So the burden right now on keeping my family taken care of and keep my partner's family taken care of is essentially being spread out over 5 different companies.
Small percentages. Yeah. It's kind of like having a merchant service account. You have 10,000 accounts, just taking 0.01%. Hey, let me ask you about the general manager you hired. How long did it take to find this guy, and what does a general manager of a now $5.5 million business in Nashville, Tennessee get? Is it 150,000 or 200,000, or what does that look like?
Yeah,
I can go to Green Door and find out what that is.
I know. I just part of me is starting to think that, like, oh, some of these people I know are going to be listening to this podcast.
This is the problem. Sometimes I ask questions that the guest gets in trouble with later.
I know,
for not revealing, and then they call me back 3 months later. Hey man, can you take that part out or take it down? Like, come on.
Now, so let me reframe this, and I will give you the answer you want.
Yeah.
Every company. So the owner has been involved 100% in every company I've bought, and within a couple months, somebody has been hired to replace them to take over that operation. Without doubt, those owners never really felt like somebody could do what they were doing.
Yes.
And I think if we're being on, we all suffer from, you definitely are proud of who you are. You feel like you're a smart person. Everybody does. You feel like you do a good job. And so pride gets in the way sometimes, to where even for me, I'm like, man, I do a great job. Like, I mean, when I left my company, I thought the doors were the building was going to collapse without me. It's pretty humbling to realize they're still going on. I obviously wasn't as important to.
I'm going to say that's part of your personality, because, I'll tell one signal here is because of the way you separate your books in the back. Regardless of the title, you have red on one side and you have yellow on the other.
You've got a good mixture here of accounting, psychology, but
anyway.
But it's so that we replaced the owner, and one time I brought in one of the companies. I brought in a 30% equity partner to let him be the operator.
Yeah. Okay.
So I basically recruited, found an investor, then also said, hey, we're going to pay you a salary to take care of this company. Another company I hired outside. I made a job ad and did interviews. Another company.
How did that go?
How did that go?
Yeah. How did the process of, did you find good clients? I mean, interviewees and potential. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a few things that tactics that I prefer. This will be interesting. So my wife, she's a real estate agent, and she was ready to employ somebody to be basically her right-hand person.
Yeah.
And so a lot of real estate agents were like, oh, you can't find good people out there. And if you do, they're going to realize they can do it themselves, and they're going to go start their own real estate career.
Part true. Yeah.
Part true.
Yeah.
And so what I did for her and what I do for myself and will continue to always do is you put out a job ad, and you basically say right up front, here's what we're looking for, and don't send me a resume. I want you to answer these 5 questions and send it to me in a video.
Okay.
And number one, it weeds out all the people that aren't tech savvy.
Yeah.
Because it takes a little bit of knowledge, right, to understand how to record a video. It's too big to email, so you're going to have to do some sort of file sharing option, and also they follow instructions. And so you'll get a whole bunch of people that will send you a resume. I didn't ask for a resume.
Immediately, they did not listen to what I was asking for.
So they can't follow instructions. I'm not going to hire them. And then some people are like, how do I, reach out, and like, can you please give me some direction on how to get this video to you? Well, they're not technology savvy enough. And most of my companies, part of the growth metric is actually implementing technology into some of the things and
using tools. Yes.
These are tools. So I don't want to hire somebody to run a company that doesn't know, how basic computers work. It's a different world. And the other thing is like, I want to see how they communicate and present themselves to me. And so I can watch 5 or 6 or 10 different videos of people and get an idea of, their cadence, are they effective communicators?
Mm-hmm.
And
they're going to be representing your company.
Yeah. And so and then after that, you start doing interviews.
What kind of questions did you ask them to talk about?
It depends on the job. They're always different. Some of these questions, a lot of times, have you ever you ask some good questions. You ask some good questions.
You're just looking at your books again.
Yeah,
you got black down here at the bottom. You got red and then orange over here.
I'm trying to find.
John, hey, this is not John. I just want you to know, I graduated in engineering a long time ago. It's just things I do, right?
So,
my daughter always suddenly goes, Dad, how do I get this number from these three numbers? And I go, oh, I love this. And I'm going to sit there for the next hour trying to figure it out for her.
I mean, but you're going deep.
Yeah.
You're asking very. I don't even think I asked the other question about what I'm paying people, but Patrick Leonocci, are you familiar with him?
I am not, but I'll write it down. Yeah.
So he wrote a book that I pretty much follow verbatim on interviewing, and I think it's like the ideal team player. I think is the name of the book, and he basically says that to have the perfect team player, they need to be a healthy combination of three things. They need to be hungry, they need to be humble, and they need to be people smart. Hungry, humble, smart. And so he has a list of questions that you interview people that really try to flesh out: is somebody hungry? Is somebody humble? Are they people smart? And so I've got several questions that I will ask that kind of flesh out, like hunger. Like number one, like you don't want to hire a lazy person to run your business. You want somebody that's driven, that is hungry. And so like one of the great questions is, tell me what it was like, what was your first job like? How old were you? And what did you do that was hard work? And his theory is, which I agree with, that work ethic is often developed at a young age. It's not something that is developed later in life. Now it can, but I want to see somebody that worked hard early and young. And so I'm really trying to ask questions that kind of flesh that out. Did they have a job in high school?
Yeah.
Did they
How
make
do you
money?
do work on this? And I'll give you the context for this, because Intuit had their mission statement, and it used to be work hard, but they changed it just when I was there to work hard and smart, work smart and hard.
Mhm.
Like, how do you know the difference between, yeah, I got you. You worked your ass off doing this, but were you working smart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so his thing was smart. It wasn't being intellectually smart. It was being people smart, emotional intelligence rather.
Right.
And so, think about it. What if you had somebody that was like really hardworking, but they were really people smart, but they weren't humble?
This is where I want to zero in on the humble. How do you understand or, get a feeling for somebody else's humbleness? Like, oh, they got a humbleness rating of 10.
Yeah. Well, I do score it on that, right? When I have my three questions that I'm asking about trying to flesh out humility, right? Like I said, when I read that book, I was sold on it, and so I do kind of score. I ask these three questions, and I kind of give them a score 1 to 10 on humility. And so, a lot of times on humility, I think it boils down to, can somebody admit that they're imperfect and that they're wrong and that other people are good? And so I think it's kind of that combination where I might ask you, John, and be like, so tell me about somebody that you used to work with that is much more gifted than you in a certain area, and that area really needs to matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you easily identify people that are more gifted than you in some very important areas? Because a lot of times you got to be able to admit that people are better than you.
Yeah.
And the second thing is like, hey, tell me what is, I don't really know you. And if we were to become friends and work together, obviously there's going to be some tension. Like, what is the worst thing? What is going to be something that I'm going to find frustrating about you?
Right.
Like, let's put you on the spot, John, since you put me on the spot. If we were really good friends and working together, what would be something that I would find frustrating about you?
Probably my Spartan and ness and my like trying to do it on my own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of delegating and bringing other people's in for advice.
So how does that play out in the workplace? Like, tell me a time. Give me a very specific incident of a time.
Well, I would take a role in a business of sales where I'm
Mm-hmm.
dependent on John Stoddard versus taking a role in operations where I have people under me.
Mm-hmm.
So I clearly identify I'm not very good at managing a lot of people because of my Spartan attitude.
Yeah. So it takes a humble person to admit that, right?
Yeah. Well,
And so you're not a narcissist. And so, and sometimes I'll even ask them like, hey, if I called your wife right now and asked her what would she say is the most frustrating thing about you? And so you kind of go through. And so I'm really just trying to understand, can people be honest and honest about their giftings and their weaknesses and their strengths? And some people just can't do that. What the worst thing about, I just work too hard. I just try to do everything. It's always, even in their weakness, they're still kind of elevating themselves. And so for me, those are red flags. And people are people. I'm imperfect. I frustrate the heck out of people.
Let me turn the tables. What's the most frustrating thing about you that people would find?
Man, I'm not super disciplined. And sometimes I get a little bit too scatterbrained. I'm probably that guy sometimes that misses the podcast deadline, time meeting. Maybe I don't respond to an email. I'm a little bit hard to wrangle down and to get in fitting inside of a certain box. I like inspiration. I love action. And when the idea hits me, I act on it, and everything else goes to the wayside. I am sometimes too transparent, which gets my mouth gets me in trouble a lot. I say things I shouldn't, which means in some ways I'm polarizing.
Yeah,
There's certain people that love
when you
me.
say
There's
too
certain people that
transparent,
can't.
like, do you blurt out an opinion about somebody or something before you think about it, or what?
Yeah. Or just I say things that I'm thinking, and so it wouldn't make me a very good politician. I would
Mhm.
not. I could never be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I could never be a politician. I could probably never be a preacher. Because if I think it, I say it. Right or wrong, I process through my words and my thoughts.
Yeah, that takes a different caliber or type of person to be able to just say something and not sweat or pass a lie detector test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what is it? Mark Twain said that an honest man needs no memory, and so,
I love that. Yeah.
you don't have to keep track of what you said in the past, because, to know what's true and what's not. I mean, and so, yeah, but so those were some of my things, but getting to your point, I think hiring a company manager is critical, and there's a lot of ways to do it, and they've looked different every single time.
Yeah.
And some of them are better than the others in certain areas. I don't think there's a perfect person, and in some ways it's really tough on me because I feel like I was a pretty good operator of a business. And it's hard sometimes when they have an idea or want to do something that you don't necessarily 100% agree. Like, I don't know that I would do it that way, but them doing it is better than me doing it.
Right. And you got to let that go.
I gotta let that go.
That's difficult, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is. It's very difficult.
It's even for me. I mean, sometimes, even with running a small business, it's just, how do I outsource with that guy? Why does it take 3 days to do it? I'll just do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just the way it is. Jon Lowrance, there's a reason I spent so much time on the first one, is because I think it sets the tone, the template for the rest of them, how you approach an acquisition. Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. I'm not going to say just buy the business and worry about it later. But for me, it's just it's kind of meets my MO. We've gotten smarter every time we've done it. I promise you, with what we do on this next, we got 3 that are under LOIs right now, 3 companies.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to take down all 3.
How are you going to finance those? Is it seller financing, or is it bank or debt, or what? Raising capital.
I pretty much go for. I mean, my shtick is seller financing.
Yeah, and these are off market deals or on market?
Mm-hmm.
Off market. Yeah,
all of them.
And you found those through the same ways you found the first one, was just networking.
You usually find what you're looking for, and once you get 1 or 2 under your belt, it gets easier because people know, and I think you've got a track record of proven
Gravitational
success.
pull.
Yeah, and it's having conversations like this, everybody that knows me knows this is what I do. And I'm probably top of mind. If I guarantee you, and for a lot of people that know me, if they run across an opportunity, I'm top of mind, and me or my wife or my partner, they're getting phone calls. And so we actually have quite a bit of deal flow coming our way. And I think that the longer I do this, the more I don't even have to go searching for them. They come to me.
I would
I
agree
really
with you there. Yeah.
I feel like it'll be a flip, but it wasn't. So that's why the first one's so critical. And so you just got to be willing to learn through the experience of doing it. And I think I share with you too, one of my favorite quotes is again, Mark Twain. But a boy learns something by carrying a cat by its tail that he can learn in no other way. And running a business and buying businesses, you learn by experience more than you do academics. And I think that the risk is, yes, be smart about it. Don't overpay for a business. Know all the academic aspects about what it's going to do, but also realize that the most important thing is to actually own a business.
That's
so the most important day of an entrepreneur's life or mergers and acquisitions probably is that first business.
Yeah.
Because that's what started it. And I think that it's people become collectors.
Are you enjoying the ride?
Yeah. I mean, how many people do you know that acquired a business, went through it, and only did it one time?
Yeah. A lot. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like a lot of because I interview people and then I interview serial acquirers. Most of the people that just buy one haven't figured out how to turn it over to somebody else.
Oh, so they're an owner operator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe they just want that, or they like that. It's just it's a decision too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird because I can't be on the organizational chart. I don't have a company email. I don't deal with customers. I don't deal with employees. I deal with one person. And a lot of times I have to hire that person.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Jon, and I have taken you way over the hours limit, and I appreciate this. So let me ask everybody here, if you guys like this content, make sure you hit subscribe.
And that's just hope that I didn't say something in this interview.
Well,
I'm going to call
gonna
you back.
Out.
If you should have come back and say, "Can you edit this little part?"
Yeah, you told me things you get in trouble for in 50 minutes into the interview versus the first thing.
Well, I enjoyed it, Jon.
Yeah, and happy holidays, Jon. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Let me hit stop.
I hope this video has inspired you. If you need help buying your first $1 million business, make sure to visit me at dealflowsystem.net. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe down below. Comment on it, share it, tell everyone about it. And thanks for watching.